You are the light of the world. You. With faith, all things are possible, if you only believe. You are the light, and when you have faith, all things are possible. And in those moments, greater things shall ye do than I have done. The words of Jesus, our great teacher. This morning, we are going to be exploring and celebrating this wonderful birthday of Jesus, the birth of Jesus, by using his words and also by exploring what is possible. Not in our ordinary sense of what is, but what is possible. And we're going to do that by using a true story. It's called the Christmas Truce. And it's a true story that happened on the battlefield of World War I, when everyone stopped. Not from the generals, not from the politicians, not from the higher-ups, but from the ordinary people like you and me who said, let's do something different. It didn't come from the politicians. It didn't come from anyone above them. It came from their hearts that said, let's do something different. And one of the most extraordinarily beautiful, hopeful, wonderful, inspiring, true, loving events happened spontaneously because of people just like you and me. You are the light of the world. Only 5 months into World War I, German, British, and French soldiers, already sick and tired of the senseless killing, disobeyed their superiors and fraternized with the enemy along 2/3 of the Western Front, a crime punishable by death in times of war. German troops held up Christmas trees out of the trenches with signs that said, Merry Christmas. You know shoot, we know shoot. Before long, thousands of troops streamed across a no-man's land strewn with rotting corpses. They sang Christmas carols, exchanged photographs of loved ones back home, shared rations, played football, even roasted some pigs. Soldiers embraced men that they had been trying to kill only a few short hours before. They agreed to warn each other if the top brass forced them to fire their weapons. They agreed to aim high. A shudder ran through the high command on either side. Here was a disaster in the making. Soldiers declaring their brotherhood with each other and refusing to fight. Generals on both sides declared this spontaneous peacemaking to be treasonous and subject to court-martial. Not many people have heard of the Christmas Truce. The Christmas Truce story goes against what most of us have been taught about people. It gives us a glimpse of what the world could be it gives us a sense of this really happened once. It is like hearing our deepest wishes may be possible, that the world really could be different. The soldiers in the trenches that day didn't ask that the world be different. They asked that they be different. Are we willing to be the change? Are we willing to step out of our ordinary trenches onto the battlefield of infinite possibility? Are we willing to be love unbridled? Are we willing to say yes to love? In order for us to step into that place, we need three things. We need faith, believe. Sometimes we want to see and then we'll believe. But we're told to believe and then we see. Oh. We need courage. Because otherwise we may sit there and know all about this, know it really well, but we don't leave our seat. Because we don't have courage. And most of all, we need to give ourselves to that love. Allow it to consume us so it has its way with us and frees us in the moment. I have found a letter that was written from a very ordinary guy whose name is Tom. Pretty ordinary, right? To his ordinary sister, Janet. Right from the trenches of this event. Consider some of the words of Tom to Janet. My dear sister Janet, it is 2 in the morning and most of our men are asleep in their dugouts. Yet I could not sleep myself before writing to you of the wonderful events of Christmas Eve. In truth, what happened seems almost like a fairy tale, and if I hadn't been through it myself, I would scarcely believe it. Just imagine, while you and the family sang carols before the fire there in London, I did the same with enemy soldiers here on the battlefield in France. Just yesterday morning, Christmas Eve day, we had our first good freeze. Cold as it was, we welcomed it, because at least the mud froze. Everything was tinged white with frost, while a bright sun shone all over. Perfect Christmas weather. During the day, there was a little shelling of gunfire on either side, and then nothing. Everything stopped. Our first complete silence in months. We hoped it might promise to be a peaceful holiday, but we couldn't count on it. We'd been told the Germans might attack and try to catch us off guard. I went to the dugout to rest, and lying on my cot, I must have drifted asleep. All at once my friend John was waking me saying, "Come and see what the Germans are doing." I grabbed my rifle, stumbled out of the trench, and stuck my head cautiously over the sandbags. I never hope to see a stranger or more lovely sight. Clusters of tiny lights were shining all along the German line, left and right, as far as the eye could see. "What is it?" I asked in bewilderment, and John answered, "Christmas trees." And so it was. The Germans had placed Christmas trees in the front of their trenches, lit by candle or lanterns like beacons of goodwill. And then we heard their voices raised in song. Silent night, holy night. When the song finished, the men in our trenches applauded. Yes, British soldiers applauding Germans. Then one of our own men started singing, and we all joined in. The first Noel, the angels did say. In truth, it sounded not nearly as good as the Germans with their fine harmonies. But they responded with enthusiastic applause of their own and began another. O come, all ye faithful. British and Germans harmonizing across no man's land. I would have thought nothing could be more amazing. But what came next was even more so. English, come over! We heard one of them shout. You know shoot. We know shoot. There in the trenches, we looked at each other in bewilderment. Then one of us jokingly shouted, "You come over here." To our astonishment, we saw two figures rise from the trench, climb over their barbed wire, and advance unprotected across no man's land, as one of them called, "Send officer to talk." Across the way, we could make out 2 or 3 men starting out of the trenches and coming toward us. Some of them were climbing out, then more came, and more and more. There they were in no man's land, suddenly over 100 soldiers and officers on each side, shaking hands with men they'd been trying to kill just hours earlier. Before long, a bonfire was built, and around it we mingled, British khaki and German gray. I must say, the Germans were better dressed than us, with fresh uniforms for the holiday. Even those who could not converse, meaning they couldn't speak English, could still exchange gifts. Our cigarettes for their cigars, our tea for their coffee, our corned beef for their sausage. Badges and buttons from uniforms changed owners, and one of our lads walked off with the infamous spiked helmet. I myself traded a jackknife for a leather equipment belt, a fine souvenir I will show you when I get home. As it grew late, a few more songs were traded around the fire, and then all of us joined in for, and I'm not lying to you, Old Lang Syne. Then we parted with promises to meet again tomorrow, and even talk of some football matches. I was just starting back to the trenches when one of the older Germans clutched my arm. "My God," he said, "why can't we just have peace and all go home?" I told him gently, "Then you must ask your superiors." Then he looked at me searchingly and said, "Perhaps, my friend, but also we must ask our hearts." Do we not live in the heart of God? And so, dear sister, has there ever been such a Christmas Eve in all history? And what does it all mean? This impossible befriending of enemies. For the fighting here, of course, it means regrettably little. This is important because he sees both sides. Decent fellows those soldiers may be, but they follow orders, and we do the same. Besides, we are here to stop their army and send it home, and never could we shirk our duty. Still, one cannot help but imagine what would happen if the spirit shown here were caught by the nations of the world. Of course, disputes must always arise, but what if our leaders were to offer well wishes in place of warnings, songs in place of slurs, presents in place of reprisals? Would not all war end at once? All nations say they want peace, yet on this Christmas morning, my dear sister, I wonder if we want it quite enough. Your loving brother, Tom. Are we willing to crawl out of our own trenches on our own battlefield of life? Are we willing to walk into no man's land and say, love, have your way with me? Create through me, through the mother, greater things than even you have done. Make me courageous and faithful, humble and pure, true and filled with your beauty, so that I, in the most unforeseen circumstances, can step up and sing, Silent Night, Holy Night.